Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. There's plenty of chairs. House right. Make your way all the way into the room at this time. Please take your seats.
Well, good afternoon. I'm going to speak a little bit slowly so that everyone can file in and find their seats. We have a pretty packed house today, and we know why you are all here, and we're grateful for it. Thank you. Did you guys have some good afternoon sessions? How about a round of applause for all our committee chairs and vice chairs? Well, now, and I'm going to ask again for all of us over in this side of the room to quietly fill in as quickly as possible so that we can give our full attention to our guest. It is my pleasure to introduce a leader whom many of you already know, Mike Bloomberg. He was elected mayor just months after the attacks of September 11th, 2001. And under his leadership, New York rebounded faster and stronger than anyone expected. The Bloomberg administration raised high school graduation rates by 40%, reduced the city's carbon footprint by nearly 20%, and increased average life expectancy by 3 years. After leaving office, his Bloomberg Foundation has made supporting cities a top priority because he knows the power that mayors have to make a difference. Just a few minutes ago backstage, I was able to personally thank him for a Bloomberg philanthropy grant that the city of Rochester Hills had been awarded, and I'm sure there are many of you in the crowd today. Just a few months ago, I was with Mike in Copenhagen for the C40 World Mayors Summit, and I've witnessed his commitment to, one Copenhagen fan here apparently in the front. I have witnessed his commitment to addressing global issues like climate change and public health at the local level. He knows that we can make great progress when we come together to exchange ideas, learn from one another, and spread our impact at convenings like this one. As I highlighted earlier today, the Conference of Mayors has put forward a bipartisan policy agenda entitled The Mayor's 2020 Vision for America, a Call to Action. And I believe that there are many priorities in our bipartisan agenda that are a shared concern for our next speaker. So please, join me in welcoming back home an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, an alumnus of our conference, Mayor Mike Bloomberg.
Thank you. Please sit, everyone. And Brian, thank you for that kind introduction, and I'm glad you gave it just the way I wrote it. I also want to thank, that always gets a laugh when you do that. I'd suggest you use it all the time. I also want to thank Tom Cochran, who I've known for a long time and has been a great leader for this group. And he invited me to DC in January to give a speech, and I said, oh, I'd be happy to do it. Actually, the truth is, I'm hoping to give a speech in DC next year. Another issue. The truth is, it's great to be here, and I'm honored. I think this city's future is brighter than ever, and a lot of the credit goes to my good friend, Mayor Muriel Bowser. She is doing a terrific job, and I hope someday soon we'll be calling her Governor Bowser. I do think the time has come for D.C. to become a state with full voting rights, and as president, I'll work with Congress to make that happen. Now, I believe I'm the only candidate with 3 mayors serving as co-chairs of my campaign, and they are 3 of the most respected mayors in the country. Steve Benjamin of Columbia, South Carolina. Greg Fisher of Louisville, Kentucky. And Michael Stubbs of Stockton, California. And our political co-chairs are 2 former mayors, Michael Nutter of Philadelphia and Manny Diaz of Miami, both who did a great job for their cities. So I guess you could say that our campaign has its own U.S. Conference of Mayors. And if you would like to join, we'd love to have you. So just to be sure you sign up at the end. Seriously, it's no secret that I'm a big believer in the power of cities and communities to drive change. Bloomberg Philanthropies has supported mayors and local leaders in that work, and I've been lucky to work with many of you over the years. We've worked together to fight gun violence and confront the opioid epidemic. We're working together to spread the economic opportunity and connect people to jobs in growing industries. We're working together to improve early childhood education and protect kids from tobacco and e-cigarettes. And we're working together to address climate change and strengthen communities against its impact. In all that work, I've tried to help local leaders change the status quo and act boldly and try new things. And you have done amazing work, and I've been honored to be part of it. So let me say thank you to all of you. I don't know if the public realizes it, but you're on the front lines of issues that matter most in this election. So it's critical that you get out there and get your voices heard. And that's what I've done through my foundation, and that's what I'm doing through this campaign. And if I become president, I can just promise you the doors to the White House will be open to mayors, because the policies that the president designs are often implemented not at the state level, but at the local level. And you will have a seat at the table in ways that has never happened before. I want your ideas. I want your feedback on what's happening on the ground. and I want you to have the authority and resources to drive change. And I will ask mayors and local leaders to be part of my unofficial kitchen cabinet on all of the big issues facing our country. And today, I'd like to focus on one that desperately needs federal leadership, and it's an issue at the heart of the U.S. Conference of Mayors 2020 Vision for America, and that's infrastructure. Every few years, the American Society of Civil Engineers looks at the state of our infrastructure and gives it a letter grade. Last time, in 2017, they gave it a D+. A D+. For 20 years, we've either gotten a D or a D+. Now, I was never a great student. In fact, I was the kind of student who always made the top half of the class possible. But I will say I only got one D ever, and that was in French, and I remember going home and my parents screaming at me. Let me just say, if the state of American infrastructure is anywhere near as bad as my French, we are in an awful lot of trouble. I know we don't all belong to the same political party or share the same position on every issue, but I've never been shy about saying what I think. And the fact is, under this president, the problem, like so many others, has been left to fester. Donald Trump has made promise after promise on infrastructure. What has he delivered? Nothing, or as we say in French, bupkis. Those are the New Yorkers laughing. Seriously, there seems to be only one construction project that he cares about, and it's a border wall that is a political gimmick and a costly one, which is something even many Republicans acknowledge. In wasting billions of taxpayer dollars that should have gone to fix our roads and our bridges and our airports and our water lines, and to build the new infrastructure that we need. Meanwhile, we're falling further and further behind other countries on infrastructure, particularly China. We won't beat China with trade wars that harm our own farmers and factory workers. We'll do it by investing in America, and that's what I would do as president. And all of you see how badly we need more investment. Our roads are unsafe and clogged with traffic. Our bridges and dams are deteriorating. Our airports are congested with more and more delays. Our railroads are stuck in the last century, and so is our power grid. Our infrastructure is adding to the climate crisis rather than helping to solve it. Meanwhile, millions of Americans lack access to high-speed internet. Millions of Americans' homes pipe in drinking water contaminated with lead and other dangerous chemicals. We just can't accept that in America, any of it. Today, I released my plan for repairing America's infrastructure and building the infrastructure that we need to grow and compete in the years ahead. It's different from the way other candidates talk about infrastructure. They usually just talk about money, because most don't have any experience in managing big infrastructure projects. Don't get me wrong, we need to invest more money in infrastructure, but mayors understand that money is only part of the problem. The fact is, even relatively simple projects take much too long, and mayors don't have enough say in what gets funded. Most of the federal funding that local communities need is funneled through state governments, who often tap into those funds to pay for other things, like their own budget deficits. That's not right, and we will fix it. We've come up with an approach, I think, that is smarter, faster, safer, and greener. And that includes putting more power in the hands of mayors and local leaders. In fact, I'll work with Congress to make sure the next transportation authorization bill requires states to distribute 100% of federal infrastructure funds intended for cities and towns to cities and towns. Imagine that. I'll also create a national capital budget dedicated to long-term local infrastructure projects. That way, mayors and local leaders can begin important projects knowing that there'll be money to finish them. We'll also make it easier for communities to borrow to invest in the future. We'll offer local governments federal loans for key infrastructure projects at a 1% interest rate. And we'll expand Rebuild America bonds and other tools that will open up access to private funding. Now, I know how much local leaders can accomplish if they have the tools to do it. When our administration entered office in New York, much of the city's critical infrastructure was old and strained. At the same time, our population was projected to grow by 1 million people before 2030, and climate change was presenting growing threats. So we created a long-term plan to prepare the city for the future, and we called it Plan YC. We invested $2.7 billion in a new water tunnel to ensure safe, clean water for the future. We built the city's first bus rapid transit lanes with more than 400 miles of bike lanes. And we led the first city-funded extension of America's largest urban train system in more than 50 years. When we left office, our carbon footprint had shrunk by 13%, far outpacing the national average. The number of jobs was at a record high. The air was cleaner than it had been in more than 50 years. And New Yorkers were living 3 years longer than they were when we entered office. We can make that kind of progress across this whole country. But to do it, we need a plan, not just a budget. But we've never had a national infrastructure plan. We've never had national infrastructure goals or national metrics for measuring success. We've been driving without a steering wheel, and it's no wonder that we're in the ditch. My administration will change that. To start, we will create a national map tracing all roads, rails, transit, air, and freight routes. Believe it or not, that doesn't even exist. We'll create clear metrics for measuring the health of our infrastructure and the success of our investments. More and more American cities are doing that, including many of yours, and our foundation has been glad to help. I think it's time the federal government caught up to what mayors are doing. Better measurement will lead to smarter investment and also more accountability. Right now, states can apply for federal funds for new projects without having to show that they are taking care of the existing infrastructure. I'll require states to set benchmarks for maintenance and repair and submit report cards on their progress. We did that for schools in New York City and helped increase graduation rates by 43%. We'll allocate funding for new projects based on how well states are maintaining what they already have. In other words, we'll reward based on performance, just like any business does. I know, what a crazy idea that is. Make it work. We'll also streamline the application process for federal grants and permitting the process for new projects. Now, President Trump wants to weaken environmental requirements, which is extremely dangerous. I will restore those requirements, but I will also make reviews faster and easier to complete so we can speed up construction without putting lives in danger. We will allocate $850 billion over 10 years to capital investments in roads, bridges, freight, and other infrastructure. We'll factor climate change into every decision and create a new financing corporation with $100 billion in annual Treasury credit to help build resilience. These investments will create millions of good jobs for carpenters, electricians, metal workers, cement masons, mechanics, and people in every construction trade. We'll make sure that everyone has the opportunity to compete for those jobs by working with labor unions and others to help people acquire the skills they need through training and apprenticeships. That includes helping people affected by transition to electric and autonomous vehicles so that workers benefit from new technology and aren't left behind. The plan we released will allow us to make progress on all the major infrastructure challenges we face. And let me just outline a few of our top goals. Number one is ensuring every American has access to clean water, an issue that has especially impacted communities of color. We'll invest $100 billion over 10 years to fix water systems in the communities at greatest risk. And we'll start with those in crisis. And we'll start with those in crisis like Flint and Newark. Number two, We will repair our roads and bridges. As part of that work, we'll create a rapid repair fund. I call it the Pothole Fund, with an annual budget of $1 billion. When I was mayor, I always encouraged New Yorkers to call our information hotline 311 to report potholes, and I made sure to do that myself if I saw a pothole. One time, the city government operator asked me for my name. I said, Mike Bloomberg, and she said, Bloomberg, how do you spell that? Only in New York. Our plan includes the first ever national effort to reduce road deaths, an issue that has not gotten nearly the attention that it should. In New York City, we cut road deaths by 24% through smarter street design and better rules and enforcement. If we spread those measures across the country, we can save something like 20,000 lives by the end of my first term. And that's a pretty good start. We'll also prepare our roads for the spread of electric vehicles by building more charging stations. But we'll also give people more ways to get around. And that's number 3, mass transit and railroads. We will triple federal investment in public transportation. We'll help cities extend public transit to more people and offer more options, including bus, rapid transit routes, and bike lanes and rail links. Now, a lot of people talk about building more rail. Well, I've actually done it when we extended the subway in New York City. And while lots of high-speed rail projects have been proposed, we will focus on what we can complete. So we will commit to finishing at least one high-speed rail corridor by 2025. Thank you. And the plan that we are releasing today also includes building new rail links to 10 of our busiest airports by 2030 to make it easier and faster to get to them. That brings us to number 4, modernizing America's airports. We will speed up replacement of air traffic control systems and boost funding for improvements to terminals and other airport infrastructure. So going to the airport can be an experience that travelers don't dread, even on Thanksgiving. And number 5, we'll expand access to clean energy and high-speed internet. And we'll do that by modernizing and connecting the power grid and by working with states and service providers to connect the more than 21 million Americans who still lack access to broadband. Investment in infrastructure helped make America the world's biggest economy and the strongest political power. We're at risk of losing that position, and we can't let that happen. But better infrastructure will also make our country safer, healthier, and more fair by helping to ensure equal access to opportunity. And local governments can help by leading the way. I know you can, because you already are. And the more we do to empower mayors and local leaders, the faster we can make progress. I've been in your shoes. I know that the federal government is too often an obstacle and not a partner in making the investments we need to build a brighter future. When I'm president, that will change. Our team will work hand in hand with mayors across the country on infrastructure and on all the big challenges facing our nation. But first, we have to win a primary, and we can't do that without a lot of help. Our campaign is building momentum, and we're taking our message to towns and cities across the country, and I hope you'll join the growing number of mayors and local leaders who are part of our campaign team. No one understands the problems facing our country better than local leaders, and no one will appreciate and value your support more than I will. So thank you again for inviting me and for all your great work. I will still tell you, being a mayor is the best job in the world. I loved it for 12 years, and I would urge all of you to do 12 years. And if you have a minor problem like limits, change the law. Thank you all. Thank you.
That was fantastic, and Mayor Bloomberg as the mayor, who's now serving his 13th year as a right, and I really like that close. That was a strong close. We are absolutely, Mayor Bloomberg, in lockstep with your idea. We could get the House to settle for just a moment. I know that was exciting, but we have another exciting panel here in just a moment. But just to mention, I think, and I wrote this down, that we're in lockstep with your idea of Washington providing Mayor Bloomberg's words, the authority and the resources to do what's needed in our communities. We appreciate that vision and all you have done for America's cities. One more round of applause for Mayor Bloomberg. Well, we're going to have to transition here because we have another fantastic session, and it's going to start right now as we set the tables and the stage behind me. We're going to move into our Women's Mayors Alliance Leadership Plenary session to be led by San Leandro Mayor Pauline Cutter. Now, it's going to take just a minute to set the stage, but please do me a favor, and I'm looking to those folks that are exiting the hall. We're going to ask you to do it silently as we have a really special panel coming up next. You have 30 seconds to get those conversations concluded. We'll be right back. Thank you, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay in the room. Please keep your seats, and we will be starting momentarily.
And I said, yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm happy that I don't have to use my teacher look to get the hall quiet. So thank you so much. I want to let you know my name is Pauline Cutter. I'm from the city of San Leandro, California. And it's my great honor to serve as the chair of the Women's Mayorship Leadership Alliance within the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I'd like to ask that all of you join us today as we celebrate our recent progress working towards our gender equality. And much of that momentum can be attributed to a robust civic engagement in communities nationwide over the past few years. Hundreds of thousands of women participated in the Women's March in cities across the country this weekend, marking the third consecutive year of this effort to harness the political power of diverse women to create transformative social change. In 2018, we saw a record number of women elected to office at local, state, and federal level. And those gains include the remarkable 117 women elected to the 116th session of Congress, as well as dozens of, yep, that's a good one, as well as the dozens of new women mayors who are here in this room. And if you're a woman mayor, can you raise your hand and we'll congratulate you. And to show that we're equal opportunity, if you're a man and you're a mayor, please raise your hand and we'll celebrate you. Okay, we were thrilled with the results and the gains in last week when the Commonwealth of Virginia became the 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. It's really a symbolic victory for the generations of American women who have long advocated for the constitutional amendment to outlaw the discrimination on the basis of gender. And I'd like to thank Boston Mayor Marty Walsh for members of his organization for passing a strong resolution in Honolulu of the ERA and our annual meeting this last June. Thank you. So It's 2020, right? And here we are still talking about the Equal Rights Amendment. I think that we need to move on and get our business done. Despite these major steps forward, it's key to much of what have we been doing and the things that we're working for. And as mentioned, the civic engagement is key to ensuring representation in all levels of government. So today our program will focus on voter registration as a critical next step to continue our momentum forward. I'm thrilled to welcome my newly elected Vice Chair, Mayor Victoria Woodards from the city of Tacoma, Washington, and she'll serve as the moderator for our next segment. Let's congratulate Mayor Woodards in this new role and welcome her to the stage. And next, our alliance is thrilled to be joined by Ms. Valerie Jarrett. Ms. Jarrett currently serves as the Senior Advisor to the Obama Foundation and a Senior Distinguished Fellow at the University of Chicago Law School. As mayors, you may have had the great fortune of working with Valerie during the Obama administration. She oversaw the White House Office of Public Engagement and Intergovernment Affairs, becoming the longest-serving senior advisor to then-President Barack Obama. She also served as chair of the White House Council on Women and Girls. Throughout her tenure, Ms. Jarrett worked diligently to mobilize elected leaders, community leaders, and the private sector. She championed equality and the opportunity for all Americans, and she worked tirelessly to politically and economically empower women, and here at the United States and around the world. Ms. Jarrett oversaw the administration's engagement on policies to empower working families and initiatives including equal pay, raising the minimum wage, paid leave, paid sick days, and affordable child care. She also led campaigns to reform our criminal justice system, end sexual violence, end sexual assault, and reduce gun violence. Ms. Jarrett has received numerous awards and honorary degrees, and she was recognized as one of Time's 100 most influential people. And her book, Finding My Voice, My Journey to the West Wing and Path Forward, was released this last April, and it quickly became a New York Times bestseller. Ms. Jarrett is here today because of her capacity in the board chair of When We All Vote, which is a nonpartisan voter registration initiative. It was recently launched in partnership with former First Lady Michelle Obama, and we look forward to learning more about those efforts today. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. It is so good to see you all. You know, I love some mayors.
And we love you.
Well, because I started out working for a mayor in Chicago. I ended up working for 3 mayors in Chicago, and that was how I got my first taste of government. So any opportunity I have to spend with those who represent the economic engine of our country, I'm happy to do so. So thank you for having me, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. It's such an honor to have you here and to be the one to be able to have this conversation with you this afternoon. We're honored that you joined us. Aren't we happy to have Valerie Jarrett with us today?
Thank you.
Well, we're going to get right into the conversation because we've got a lot to talk about in a very short period of time. But obviously, you've been really busy.
I have been busy.
You've been a little bit busy since you left the White House.
Just as have all of you, right?
Well, it's so good to see you here at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And so you've been working a lot. You've had your prior roles as overseeing the White House Office of Public Engagement and Intergovernmental Affairs under President Barack Obama, but you've also been up to a lot since then. So tell us what you've been up to, other than coming to Tacoma, Washington. She was in my city, y'all.
I did actually love Tacoma, Washington. Well, after the administration ended, and I had the privilege of serving all 8 years from day one to the last day. In fact, I joke about the fact that I waved goodbye to the Obamas when they were on their way to the inauguration. Because I just knew I had the best job ever, and why would I want to leave? But at some point, Secret Service looked at me and they said, "Girl, you got to go now. You are a real borrowed time. Your badge is about to expire." But I did some real soul searching, and I said, having had the privilege of working on every single issue that came across his desk for 8 years, what are the issues that I really care deeply about? And I decided in this next chapter of my life, that's what I wanted to do. And they were pretty simple because they're ones that I've cared about for a long time. In the introduction, it was mentioned that I chaired the White House Council on Women and Girls, and so fighting for gender equity is important to me. Fighting for criminal justice reform. I joined the board of the Innocence Project, a wonderful organization that works to exonerate people who are innocent, but we know we all spend too much money trying to put people in the system when they really just need a fair shot. So what can we do to make life easier so every young person gets a fair shot? And President Obama started My Brother's Keeper, and I've helped work on that. What do we do to make the system fairer? What do we do to help people get the skills who are incarcerated so when they're released, they can lead a law-abiding life? And then how do we get them jobs when they do get out so that they don't just continue that cycle? So I work on that. Ending gun violence is important to me. I joined the faculty at the law school at the University of Chicago. I have not practiced law since 1991. So you're clapping because I haven't practiced law. I'm a reformed lawyer, but I love being around smart young people and having them help work on these issues that I care about. I help President Obama with his foundation. And I know we're here today to talk about when we all vote, but a final organization I would mention is the United States of Women.
Right.
That grew out of the White House Council on Women and Girls. So I would keep myself out of trouble, pretty much.
Sounds like you've been a little busy since you left.
I have. It's keeping me healthy. It's like keep moving, doing things positively that you can do. And
Well, no, we need you to keep moving. We need you to keep doing the work that you're doing because it's really making the difference in our communities. So the Women's Mayor Leadership Alliance was formed as a way to encourage and develop leadership potential for women mayors. You were chair of the White House Council on Women and Girls for President Obama, which you just mentioned, and you've talked a lot about gender equity. And ensuring all women have a seat at the table, but not just a seat at the table, they actually get to have a voice and a meal when they sit there. Yes. But since you've left the White House, you've been working on building, and you just talked about building United States of Women. Yeah. What is the organization doing, and how can we here today help and get involved?
Well, you can help a lot. So the organization, as I said, grew out of the White House Council on Women and Girls, and we gave the new administration a little while to see if they were going to continue it, and when they didn't, Tina Chin and I, who worked on it together, thought, well, all change happens on the ground anyway. Why don't we form a not-for-profit organization that focuses on gender equity, closing the gender gap? And so the last year that we were in the White House, we hosted a summit. Some of you may have been here in Washington. We had 5,000 people show up from all around the country and the world sharing best practices on gender equity. And so Tina and I thought, well, let's have another summit in 2018. We held it in Los Angeles. Mayor Garcetti was an incredible host, and we had twice as many people come. And so don't you know, this summer, and we haven't released the date yet, but this summer, we're going to be hosting another conference, and we're going to ask all of you mayors, many of you who are working on this issue of gender equity, let me know what the best practices are that are going on in your communities. We want to put a spotlight on those who are making things happen. It's just all about solutions. We know what the problems are. We know women only earn 80 cents on the dollar, women of color much less than that. We know that the minimum wage is leading to people not being able to take care of their families. It's leading to mental health challenges. We know what the challenges are for working families. The question is, what are the solutions? And so give us your solutions, and we would ask for all of you to join us, and we'll be releasing shortly the location and the dates, and we want your best ideas. And they can come from the business community, they can come from the mayor's office, they can come from the philanthropic community that's very engaged in this. We have women's foundations all across the country, and it can come from advocates who say, look, this is what we know works. It's evidence-based strategies that we want to help convene people, get them together, share those best practices, and take solutions to scale.
You know, we can clap for that. That's really great work. One of the things that I love about this government work is the fact that the best ideas are ideas that we share. So unlike the private sector, they get ideas and they hang on to them because they want to make a lot of money from them. But in the public sector, we share those ideas. And what's so really great is that we face a lot of the problems. So again, thank you to you for bringing us together. I love when we can get together and talk about best practices, because we can learn from one another and take those back and actually implement them in our community without having to reinvent the wheel. And so thank you so much for doing that. How many of you will attend the conference? I'm going.
Please go. I'll send out the date.
There you go, so we
we're
can- we
gonna
can all be
announce
there
it
with you.
soon. Please come, send your staff, or send the business leaders in your community, the academics who are doing evidence-based studies, whoever you think can help put a spotlight on what works. You're
Right.
welcome.
Great, thank you. So as Mayor Cutter mentioned in her opening remarks, the Mayor's Leadership Alliance is also focused on voter registration.
Yes, thank
we know
you.
how important that is to really change what's happening in the United States. We are so excited to hear about the work of When We All Vote and what they're doing to increase voter registration and participation in all elections across the country, no matter if it's a school board race or if it's a national election. Tell us more about When We All Vote and how your co-chairs, including former Lady First Lady Michelle Obama, got together around this idea.
Yeah, so after the last election, Mrs. Obama was really troubled by one data point, the fact that 43% of eligible voters did not vote in the last election. And so she said, what can we do in our country to change the culture around voting? And not about one election or one person running for office, but really helping to awaken people about their civic responsibility to be informed voters as just like the minimum threshold that you are responsible for if you want the privilege of being a citizen in this great country. And so she thought, well, what if we get a bunch of co-chairs, and it's everyone from Tom Hanks to Janelle Monáe, really cool people, who are influencers, led by her, who's a rock star, I think, and let's go out and focus on young people and people of color, but expand it. And she intentionally, Madam Mayor, wanted to make it nonpartisan because she said, I don't want this to be something that polarizes the country. I want to go into every school district. And so we're working with high schools to try to get high schools to help register people to vote. And I know that there are mayors around the country that are already leading this charge. Mayor Walsh from Boston, for example, has an initiative to go into the high schools and pre-register people. We want to make sure that our colleges and universities are registering people. They're captive audiences. And so we're going to have a challenge for colleges and universities. We want to build communities where people make it fun to vote again and form their voting squads. And we know that people are influenced by those who they respect and who they love. And so if we can get groups together that go out and register people to vote and knock on doors and participate and educate people about the candidates, all of the candidates running for office, that would be helpful. And then the final thing is our Civic Cities Challenge, which is where you guys come in. So we want you all to do what I know you love to do, and that is to compete against one another to see who can get the most people registered in your cities. And of course, many of you are already doing this, from Minneapolis to Philadelphia to Boston, I mentioned earlier, to Los Angeles. Free transportation is available in many cities on voting day. But what are the best practices that you can come up with to help increase the number of folks in your cities who are registering and actually turning out to vote? And get everybody involved. Get the advocacy community, get the business community. We're working with teachers and principals and schools across the country that are in your school districts. Include them in that process, and let's see what we can do to really increase the number of people who turn out, not just for president, but as you know, it matters who's the mayor. It matters who's on your city council. You have to work with your city council. It matters who's in the state legislature drawing the lines that make important decisions about funding and representation. It matters who's your governor. Every single office matters. It matters who's your prosecutor, who's making prosecutorial discretion decisions involving our criminal justice system. And so I'm here today to really just ask for your help to figure out new, innovative ways of turning that 43% into zero. I actually believe in mandatory voting. I don't think I'm going to get that through Congress. I don't think I'm going to get a free day so everybody can take off work and go vote. I'm being realistic here. But I do think that we could increase the number of people who turn out. In the midterm elections, it ticked up. I think for young people, for example, who disproportionately do not vote, they went from 20% to 30%. That's a huge jump, right? But 70% still didn't vote, which is why we're targeting young people who have the most to lose, the most at stake. They're going to be here the longest.
Absolutely.
And evidence shows, the final point I would make is that evidence shows that those who vote in their first election are more likely to be lifelong voters. So let's get them early.
So speaking of young people, I mean, we know that a lot of millennials don't vote because they don't think it makes a difference.
No.
And so how do we get them to understand? I mean, the fact that you talk about getting down to even the school board level, when I was reading about when we all vote, the fact that you're going to work in schools and get parents registered, not just kids, but get parents. But we've got these young people. How do we encourage them? How do we break that cycle of them not engaging?
Well, we have to make it cool to vote. We have to have people who they trust, who they are influenced by. Talk to them. We all know that we are all influenced by those who are around us, those we respect, those we love. And so that's part of why we want to have these circles of voting squads, so that people can talk to their peers and can influence. One of the many reasons why it ticked up in the midterm elections is that those amazing young people from Parkland who went through the worst tragedy any teenager should have to endure, a school shooting, took that pain and that anguish and they channeled it into activism. And they traveled summer before last all over this country, red state, blue states alike, registering people to vote. And one of them I met in Chicago, which is where they kicked off their tour. Mm-hmm. He had, I don't even know what it's called, shows you how old I am, you know, those little bars where you swipe and like, thank you very much. And you're not that young, but you knew what it was. Okay.
Oh.
Wait, who's mine? Oh, David Hoggs. Okay, well, he's amazing. He's my friend on DM. We DM each other from time to time. That's about as cool as I get. But anyway, when we kicked off their tour, and I'm going to tell you this story about David in a second. We kicked off their tour. One of the teenagers came up to me, and he had a QR bar on his T-shirt. And he said, hold up your telephone and turn on the camera to my T-shirt, which I did dutifully. And don't you know, it automatically linked into how I could register to vote where I was. And I said to him, how come I didn't think of that? And you know what he said? Because you're not young. He might have said, because you're not 17. Maybe he was more gracious than what I just said. But the bottom line is these kids came up with these incredible ideas. And I was fussing at David, you'll appreciate, because he was in Texas, not inside the venue where they were having their rally. But no, David went outside and started meeting with the demonstrators. And so I'm texting him like, David, you know, Texas, they carry guns in Texas. And he said, I have to be willing to talk to the people with whom I so strongly disagree and hear them out. So that's coming from a young person, which is why if we get the Davids of the world engaged right now, and they see the ability to move that needle as those young people did, then what might happen in 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years from now? So that's why we're going after the young people.
I think that's really smart. And we want to give David's mom a hand for raising such a responsible young man.
He's an effective leader, but you know, we know in our communities all across this country, we have extraordinary talent. I always say talent is ubiquitous, opportunity is not. And so the question that we all have to ask ourselves as the leaders is, well, what are we going to do to expand that opportunity? And getting people involved in civic engagement, we think, is the way towards that opportunity. Because so many kids, part of they don't vote because they feel apathetic, they don't know that government does anything for them, they don't feel empowered to make a difference. And when we can show them that if these teenagers from Parkland could travel the country and move the needle, just imagine what you could do in your own neighborhood.
Well, you know, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I'm really proud to say, has stepped up, and they held their first youth summit last year in Los Angeles, and now they're holding it this year in Portland, Oregon, so it'll be an annual event. But I think it's a really great way to engage youth in the process so that they really understand, and then to not just see themselves in their own city, but as they work with other cities and see young people from across the country coming together to engage, you're right, it makes a really big difference when we engage them and let them use their own ideas.
Yes.
And their own thoughts and ways. You want to know how to get kids to vote? Ask kids.
Ask kids.
And if you ask them, they will absolutely tell you. But let's move away from kids for a second and talk about the adults in the room.
Yes.
So you've said we can come to the conference. How else can we, you know, when you talk about when we all vote, how important that is to our country, how else can mayors, what in this room can we do to support it? And what kind of ideas can you give to us that we can take back and use?
Well, I would ask you to talk to the people who are in your community right now who are engaged in voter registration. We will have a one-pager that we'll give out to everybody who's here that suggests how you can engage with whenweallvote.org. You can go to our website, you can take the piece of paper. But I think just looking at what's going on right now, and I mentioned a few cities because many of you are already working on this. And so part of our challenge isn't just how many raw numbers of people do you add to the rolls, but what's the greatest improvement? Where are the cities where you've really dug down and you focused on this issue? And we encourage you, and the U.S. conference is a perfect place to do it. The National League of Cities is involved with us as well. Share your best practices with each other. To your earlier point, Mayor, about the fact that you don't have to covet it. We want everybody to get better at this. And so we will be happy to share with you what we think works, influenced by people you know. And there's no substitute for just, out there with that clipboard, registering people in front of the grocery store. And I see those folks all the time. Giving them some support, I think, would be great coming from your leadership. There's so many volunteers, the election judges. Do they ever get a hug from their elected officials? No, they really don't. But they're doing such important work. And you have to hold the system accountable. I mean, I should shout out some of the work that, for example, Stacey Abrams from Georgia is doing, because the flip side of registering people to vote is ensuring that our vote is not being suppressed. And you guys could be very helpful in that effort. She's now working in 20 states, but she can't be everywhere. And you are, again, you're the ears and eyes on the ground. You know the laws that are being passed in your states. You know the practices that are going on that are suppressing the vote. So share those practices and hold the people who are doing that accountable, as you are actually uniquely qualified to do. Eric Holder is doing incredible work on redistricting, trying to make our districts fairer. And so we say, let's look at it really holistically. How can we make our country healthy, where every citizen feels a vested interest in the outcome? And your leadership, your role models all across the country, everybody knows who their mayor is. They may not know who their state rep is. They may not know a lot of their congressperson, but they know who their mayor is. And you're out there every day. You're in front of the press. I'm glad the press is here today. Use your bully pulpit in a way to try to encourage people as well. There's just so much you can do for which our country should be really grateful.
Thank you. So final question. So from your point of view, what's at stake in the 2020 election?
Oh boy, a lot.
Loaded question.
Well, a lot, and it's not just, obviously I'm here wearing a nonpartisan hat, so I'm not going to talk about politics, but I think that if we continue on this trajectory of disengagement, and I was backstage earlier talking with Mayor Walsh, it's not just disengagement from politics. I think young people are just so frustrated with many of our institutions, and they have the luxury of just defining their own community in the palm of their hand and their telephone. And so they don't have to get uncomfortable. They don't have to get out of their comfort zone. They don't have to do what David did and go listen to somebody who has a dramatically different view than they do. And I think that that's not good for us as a society. And I think the toxicity that we all feel in the air, and I know many of you said to me earlier that you feel it on the ground in your cities as well, well, we need to reverse that trend. And I think part of the concern we have with so many people not voting is a sense of apathy and disengagement and polarization and not talking to one another and not listening particularly to those with whom we disagree. And so I think this election is about trying to figure out ways of bringing people back together at a time when the stakes are so high. And the challenges we have, not just in this country, but around the world, actually require cooperation. They require us to compromise. And I'm old enough to remember when compromise wasn't a bad word. And I think we are pushing ourselves away as opposed to coming together. And so I like to look at this election, if we can increase the number of people who turn out to vote dramatically, then they become more of a citizen. They become more vested in the outcome of our country. They become more invested in the outcome of your cities. I was depressed when my city, Chicago, which is always going to be my hometown, we have a terrific new mayor, African-American woman who's openly gay, but the number of people who voted was abysmally low. And I think as elected officials, you would agree that if you have huge voter turnout, it helps you to have that wind at your back from the citizens in your city. And so that's another reason why I think we need to increase those numbers so that you do have that mandate. And you know that people are not going to just vote and then go back home and expect you to solve all their problems. No, voting is the beginning. Voting is not the end.
Well, and they have to hold us accountable.
And they should hold you accountable.
One thing to put us in office, it's another thing to hold us accountable. Valerie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the work that you do.
It's good
on behalf
to
of
see
the
you.
U.S. Conference of Mayors, come back and see us anytime.
I will. I'll
Great.
take you up on that. Thank you very much. I like to do this.
for the rest of our program, I'd like to welcome our panelists for the discussion about how mayors can support voter registration efforts locally. Our first panelist is Fort Worth, Texas Mayor Betsy Price. She was re-elected to her 5th term in office 2019, and she's remained focused on promoting jobs, strengthening education, and improving mobility in one of the fastest growing cities in the country. Please welcome Mayor Price. And next we're joined by Satya Rhodes Conway, who is the newly elected mayor of the city of Madison, Wisconsin. But you may already know her from her previous work as managing director for Mayor's Innovation Project. And her new role as mayor, she's focusing on affordable housing, transit, and equitable governance. Please welcome Mayor Rhodes Conway. Fans in the audience. Our final panelist is Kyle Learman. He's the CEO of When We All Vote. He also is the founder and CEO of Civic Advisors, and following his previous service as the White House Senior Associate Director of Public Engagement. In that capacity, he served as a liaison to national leaders and helped the administration launch It's on Us, a campaign to prevent sexual assault. And if you will notice, he is a man. Come on out, Kyle. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And talking about a very, very important subject. I think we'll start with our mayors first, if that's all right. And first of all, I just want to ask a little bit about your city, the voter registration process in your city or county or state jurisdiction, and have there been any new requirements recently affected or not? Mayor Price?
Sure. Fort Worth is, and I've been up here once today, so some of you have heard me. But Fort Worth's now the 13th largest in the city in the nation with phenomenal growth. And that means we have a lot of new people that have to be registered. We don't do the city contracts with the county for voter registration. But for years, I was a tax assessor, and I had a seat on the county election board. And I stayed closely involved. But Texas went to, one thing that we see is serious voter fatigue. An election here for schools, an election here for county officials, an election for city officials. Then, by the way, you got primaries tossed in and national elections. So Texas went to 2 elections a year, and everybody falls on those 2 elections. And it has helped. The other thing that we did this year, and in Tarrant County, in Dallas County, we helped pilot it. We moved, when you early voted for the 10 days of early voting, you could vote anywhere in the county in any election. But on your regular election day, you had to vote at your home precinct. And people would forget if the precinct location changed or if they're working late and they want to get there by 7. So this year we piloted opening that up. You can vote anywhere in the county on election day. And that was very successful, and now we've made it permanent. Going forward, that's what we're going to do.
Wow.
So it's been really good, and education campaigns, and if we all voted, just think what we could do.
I can't imagine the logistics of that so far, but I'll have to ask you more questions about that. And how about you?
So Madison is approximately 240,000 people. We've got 180,000 registered voters. Much of the work around elections is done out of my city clerk's office, and they're doing an incredible job around voter education, voter registration, in the face of some, I think, pretty significant challenges in state law. So we're a voter ID state. That's happened not too many years ago. You may have read in the news recently, they're trying to purge voters from our voter rolls, and we'd lose 200-something thousand across the state, so that's another challenge we're facing. People don't know if they're registered or not. And we've got just sort of increasing requirements around what you need to bring to the polls, what you need to have proof of address, and it just makes it harder for people to get registered. So we really have been facing some challenges around that, but I think local government has really stepped up, and Madison in particular.
All right, thank you. Again, to start with you then, what is the city of, Madison doing to support the voter registration this year? Are there anything different that you're doing, or are you going out and promoting it? I mean, it's going to be a big year.
It's going to be a big year, and there's a little something going on in Wisconsin in July. So we're hoping to have a little more attention on the election. But yeah, we see voter registration as one component of a much larger piece of work that has to do with outreach and education in addition to registration, and then also turnout. Right? So our clerk's office trains voting ambassadors. They go out all across the city. They will help people understand what kind of ID they need. They will help people get ID. We have a great partnership with the League of Women Voters and the NAACP that if somebody does not have the correct ID to vote, they will actually facilitate a person getting out to the DMV to get a Wisconsin voting ID. They'll get you a free cab ride. They'll go with you if you need it. They really want people to have the ID that they need. So that's a great partnership that we've got. We do mock elections in schools and at festivals and at community events, mostly for kids, but we get their parents at the same time, right? And then we do voter registration at every front desk in the city. So you walk into City Hall, you're going to the clerk's office, you're going to the treasurer, you're going up to the city attorney, whatever it is, that front desk person can register you to vote. So we're really focused on touching people wherever they are, not just registration, but with a whole suite of education and information, because even when people are registered to vote, we've found that they can be intimidated out of voting if they don't have enough information.
Right. And how about in Fort?
Yeah, and oftentimes it's not just the fatigue of voting sometimes, but the registration process is daunting. And we've done a lot of what you've done. To be a registrar, you have to go through a 4-hour training session, and you used to have to go to voter administration to train to take voter registration. You don't now. You can become licensed to be a voter registrar online, and that's helping some. And we used to say you had to have, a hard copy and a wet signature to vote. Well, now you don't. We do have voter ID in Texas, but we're getting a lot more traction, a lot more education. We've had it in place now for 4 or 5 years. We're working with the YMCAs, our local churches, all of our young leader groups, AARP, NAACP, all are working on it. I'll tell you, AARP and Silver Sneakers have been one of our biggest advocates. And the other piece is working with the high schools and even junior highs and the colleges, because a lot of this is about civics. People just don't know. I don't get asked very often about voter fraud or voter suppression. I get asked a lot more often about, why does my vote matter? What difference is it going to make whether I vote or not? They've just missed a huge amount of civic engagement, and they tend to vote better at the national level and okay at the state level, but not very well at all at the local level. And I think we have to be, one of the hallmarks of my administration has been public engagement. And voter registration and voter engagement is a big piece of that. We started a young leaders group called Steer Fort Worth the year I was elected, because my first election in 2011, only 12% of our voters voted in the municipal election, but less than 1% of them were under the age of 40. And Steer Fort Worth is a group from 18 to 40. There's 400 of them now, and every one of them is registered to vote, and almost every one of them voted in the last 2 elections.
That's great.
It's been a big piece, but it's a face-to-face touch.
Yeah.
Then they go out and touch people, and they go out and touch people.
We have similar issues, I think, in terms of new voters, right? Because we've got a Big Ten university, so we have the pleasure and honor, I will say, of introducing thousands of new voters every election, right? We have young people who come to us from all over who've never voted before. And so it's our job to educate them, to reach out to them, to make sure they understand that they can vote in Madison, and they should vote in Madison, and how they do that. So we work with the UW as well.
Yeah, we work with ours too, because we're a couple of big universities too, like you. And that is a challenge. They don't know that they can vote locally.
Yeah.
Not send it back home. So Kyle, what is the goal of When We All Vote initiative? And can you tell us how mayors can partner with the When We All Vote?
Absolutely, and you heard a little bit from Valerie, but When We All Vote sort of starts with the premise that voting has to be bigger than any one candidate or one issue or one party or one election. It has to be about people wanting to use their voices and their power. And so we start from that premise, and then in terms of breaking down the voting process and what we can all do, voting is really about three things: access, information, and motivation. So you got to do everything you can to create as much access for voting as possible. You got to do everything you can to make sure people are educated and have the information that they need to vote. And then you need to make sure that they're motivated. But again, it can be bigger than any one candidate or one party. It can be about convincing people that their vote does matter. And so what we're doing, and I know Valerie talked about this, but we wanted to come here today to the U.S. Conference of Mayors to tell folks that in a few weeks, Mrs. Obama is going to be launching something called the Civic Cities Challenge. And we are right now finalizing, building out a blueprint and playbook for mayors on how mayors can take best practices from folks like the mayors on stage to implement basically a civic cities program. How can you as a mayor do everything possible to make sure your community is registered and ready to vote? Not just in the 2020 election, but beyond. And so the two sort of pieces of that are, one, how do you use your internal resources as a mayor? I loved the front door piece. So every time your city government touches your constituents, making sure that you're asking your constituents if they're registered to vote. But then also, I think just as important is you all using your convening power locally, bringing together local businesses, the schools, the colleges and universities, the local radio stations, and saying, in a nonpartisan way, all of us can play a role in making sure our customers, our members, our employees are registered and ready to vote. And so we want all of the folks in this room to be on the ground floor, to be founding members, city members of the Civic Cities Challenge. And that, we think, can unlock and sort of break this cycle of a lot of folks turning out in a presidential election and maybe not as many turning out in state and local elections. If it's not just about the top of a ticket, if it's about people making their voice heard, it's not just going to happen in those big national elections. So we have to break that cycle.
So are there going to be any resources available to cities, mayors, or certain like rubrics that we can send out with our text messages and so forth?
Absolutely. We're doing everything we can to make this as seamless and easy as possible for mayors across the country. And also, as I said, sharing the best practices of what other cities are doing. But we literally have a program for everything you want to do. If you want to engage your high school, last week we launched a program called the 2020 Prom Challenge, where When We All Vote and MTV are going to supercharge 20 proms across the country. We're giving $5,000 to 19 high schools across the country that do a great job of registering at least 85% of their high school seniors. And then When We All Vote and MTV are actually going to throw the prom of the high school in America that does the best job of registering their high school seniors and getting them registered to vote. So there's both the sort of brass tactics, blocking and tackling resources, exactly how folks can do it, the messages that they can send out. But we also want to celebrate great work, both the great work that mayors are doing, but also the great work that the mayors help push. So we want all of you to call your high schools and get them signed up for that program. We want all your colleges and universities to sign up for a program we call the All-In Campus Democracy Challenge, which is getting colleges and universities to use their sort of administration's power, signing people up and registering them when they come in from orientation. There are a lot of things that mayors can do, both using their convening power and internally. One thing I read about recently was a lot of your cities provide free tax prep services for folks in your communities. You can make sure that folks are getting registered while they're doing their taxes this year. At every point, there is a place where you can make sure folks are registered, and we're going to make that as easy as possible for all of you. We have the tools, we have the resources, and we're going to be really celebrating the mayors that do this work well.
I'm also thinking some of us have to walk precincts for either our tax initiatives or election purposes or something. It's always nice to have that in your bag in case somebody tries to tell you they're not registered, and we'll fix that. So let's talk a little bit about voter suppression. And what are some barriers, if you've seen this in your city, and what are some barriers that you've helped overcome to try to?
Voter suppression is there, but it's more about education, and I mentioned fatigue earlier, but the real place that we see, and I don't know that voter suppression, and I'm not an expert on voter fraud or voter suppression. My job is to get them out, get them registered, and get them to the polls. And that serves all of us better. I think it's really more about disinformation. People hear one story or read it on the internet and believe it's true. It's our job to really get the truth out about that, what they need, where they can go, and how it can be done. And the other piece is to build a trust. We have a very large Hispanic population in Fort Worth, and many of them are first-time voters. They're first registered, they're kids or dreamers. You've got to build a trust with them because they don't come from a community where they trust their local officials or they trust their government officials, so they just don't vote. For us, more than suppression, it's about building the trust and getting the knowledge out about what they can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually agree that I think that the lack of information or misinformation is probably the biggest barrier because the confusion keeps people from going to the polls. One of the things that our clerk's office sees is that even if folks are registered, if they have any doubt about what kind of ID they need or any part of the process, because you have to vote at your precinct in Madison on election day. I'm taking that one home.
Me too.
But it's going to be your neighbors there, and you don't want to be embarrassed in front of your neighbors. And so we actually do see people not going to the polls, even though they're registered. So I think it is, again, coming back to the full suite of you want to educate people, you want to get them registered, but you also have to turn them out. One of the things that we've done in Madison, which I'm particularly proud of, is that we do early voting at every single library throughout the entire city.
And it's great.
And we have a couple of other municipal facilities that are in, we try and spread it out all across the city. So for a couple of weeks before Election Day, you can walk in to any library and many city offices and cast your ballot, no matter where you live in the city of Madison. And again, similarly, we have to go back to our home precincts on Election Day, but I'm going to look into what we can do about that.
Right.
But we have seen a significant increase in turnout as a result of the work we've done around early voting, to just make it anything that makes it more convenient for people, easier for them to get registered, easier for them to go vote, I think helps. And we can do a lot of things to that end.
Okay, so we probably have room for at least one more question. One of the things, just thinking about in my city of San Leandro, is the youth vote. And sometimes you get those real excited 18, 19-year-olds because they get to vote, but then it goes into this big lag of, excuses. And I think we've heard a little bit about some of the practices you use, or do you have anything that you can pinpoint? And I'm going to start with Kyle, and then we'll come back around.
Yeah, well, I mentioned, I think, so I managed all of our youth outreach in the Obama White House. Hardest community to reach for us on any of the issues was the 18 to 24-year-old non-college young folks. So most important thing is catch them before they leave high school. And so that's why we have our My School Votes program and that 2020 Prom Challenge I mentioned. So catch them while they're in an institution and while they're with people that they trust. The second piece is that all-in campus democracy challenge. Make sure your colleges and universities are involved and engaged in pushing this. The third thing, and I just want to sort of mention this as well, one of the ways, and we did a lot of work with mayors around summer jobs and summer learning. One of the things we've talked with a few mayors about is integrating voter registration into summer jobs efforts. So you're providing summer jobs for young people in your communities. One, let's make sure those folks who are getting those jobs are registered. But two, those summer jobs could be doing voter registration. And the best way to reach that a non-college 18 to 24-year-old community is from folks within that community. And so if you have folks that you're helping get summer jobs, making sure that they're talking to their peers, making sure they're talking to their neighbors. So it's using the institutions, and then that summer jobs piece could be really important. And then the thing I'll say we'll do is we got the celebrities covered. So we got Michelle Obama, we got Lin-Manuel Miranda, we got Selena Gomez, we got Tracy Ellis Ross. Our co-chairs are phenomenal at spreading the word online, and we're going to go huge on that. And so that's sort of another layer of how we're making sure we're reaching young people in a really significant way.
Okay, I just want to call dibs on Lin-Manuel
all right.
right now.
Madison visit.
Come on to Madison, Lin-Manuel.
They will be going to Civic Cities Challenge Cities, by the way.
So one thing that I just want to add to that is that we actually hire high school students to work the polls. So we need a lot of poll workers. I'm sure you all do too. And under Wisconsin state law, we can hire high school students to do that work. And so it's an early introduction for them. Before they can legally vote, they figure out how the election works, what the process is like. They get a level of comfort with it. And hopefully that translates then when they are eligible to them registering and having a habit of voting.
And I think you can register them all day long, but you've got to get them to the poll. You've got to get them to understand why on either early voting or why on election day they have to be there. And I guess everywhere, and particularly in Texas, we have civics teachers that they don't get much civics, but history teachers whose kids can get additional points towards their national merit or towards whatever they're working on if they volunteer on campaigns. And when I first ran, and several of my others, I had kids in every part of the city, starting from 9th grade up, who can either knock doors for you or go to polling sites and pass out literature. And I'll run into those kids now because I've been serving 9 years, and they'll say, you know, we're voting because we actually saw an elected official and a candidate hard at work. And we tell our friends too, and I think engaging them, I love the high school piece, and we are doing some civic classes and registering them, but you got to engage them in what you're doing. We get them in as interns in the summer, but it goes a long way if you actually get them on your campaign.
We, for the first time in Madison last year, had a mayoral debate at a high school to an audience of high school students. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
The one other program I just want to mention, because I totally agree, it's not just about registration, it's about turnout. One of the pieces that's part of the Civic Cities Challenge, and we've run tests over the course of the last few election cycles on this. We literally run a program where you throw parties at polling locations. It's called Vote Together. We have research with a professor at Columbia University that shows that can increase turnout by up to 4%. And those of you in here know up to 4% is actually huge when it comes to turnout. And so again, it's about, those are nonpartisan events. And you mentioned libraries. These can be taking place anywhere. We want to go big with those at early vote locations as well. So there's, with When We All Vote, there's really a way sort of along the entire cycle for us to work with you all through the Civic Cities Challenge, and it's both registration and turnout.
And mayors have a great voice with their business community, and not just the little ones, but we've gone to several of our big businesses and said, what can you do to get your employees to turn out? And several of them now do free meals. If you go take your lunch hour and go vote and come back with an I voted sticker, they give you lunch or a voucher to go to a restaurant and stuff, and people love it. And a lot of the businesses will go, that's a no-brainer. And we can do that. So it's been a great tool. Just every little bit helps.
Every little bit.
Every little touch. It's about the quantity of touches to them, I think, more than nearly anything.
Okay. Well, I just really want to thank you for hanging with us and hearing about this subject. It's something that's near and dear to all of our hearts, getting elected, and then just really seeing that civics is carried out in our communities. So thank you very much for being here.